how did it all start? Okay, it started in July of 2024. I was taking a shower and I felt something in my breast. But I have fibrocystic breasts, and I've actually had a cyst removed before, and honestly that's what it felt like. It felt ropey, and when I looked it up, it just, everything that I found confirmed that it was just probably ropey cystic tissue. And I actually saw my OBGYN right after, and when she was doing the breast exam, when she got over to that side, she stopped and she said, "Has that always been there?" And I thought, oh, she felt it too. But she was talking about a rash in my armpit that I have struggled with for a couple of years.
Okay, also, let's back up a little bit. You found that rash, but what was going on in our lives during that time?
Oh, yeah. Well, so September 2022, we bought into a franchise. It's a fitness franchise here that I had been attending and fell in love with. And they seemed to just be absolutely killing it. And so we bought into this, and we were watching people buy in. It seemed like just this fantastic thing. So we bought into it at the end of 22, or September 22. September 23 is when we had a location secured and we really started working. And it was almost immediately nothing like what we expected, and the stress was overwhelming. That was the first time in my life that I was waking up every night and I just was paralyzed with fear and stress.
And anxiety. We really quickly realized that this is not going like it should. And only, September to January, we made the decision to shut down the business after talking to other franchisees who we found out were just absolutely drowning. And franchisees who had emptied their retirement accounts to fund this, who had sold their homes to fund it, and they were still drowning. And so we made the decision after talking to our lawyer that we were gonna just pull the cord. So after we pulled the plug and shut the business down, the stress didn't stop because we had a very large SBA loan that we took out to fund this business that was, not supposed to be any big deal because the business was going to make so much money, it was going to be able to pay for it. And instead we were left with a $400,000 SBA loan, as well as more than that,
multiple, just a little bit more than that, as well as multiple credit cards that were used. And that was daunting, and we quickly faced, how are we going to get out of this, and are we going to lose everything in the process of getting out of it? When we bought into this business, we were told that they just run themselves, right? We could just hire a general manager and the business would run itself. And so obviously we knew that we would be involved in some capacity, but we thought we would still be able to work our real estate business full time, and that was not the case at all. And so our real estate business, this other business took all of our attention, and our real estate business just slowed down to pretty much nothing. And so then here we pulled the plug on this other business, and now our real estate business isn't producing, and we have no income or hardly any income. And with real estate, you don't get a paycheck every 2 weeks. You don't know when your next check is coming sometimes. And so the stress of all that, like the instability and the insecurity, and as a mom, like worrying about my kids, and are we gonna have to sell our house? Where are we gonna live? How are we gonna pay our bills? It literally kept me up at night. I feel like I have probably worried myself into this current situation the last year and a half. So, needless to say, we defaulted on that SBA loan, and shortly after defaulted on all of the other debt payments associated with the business. In July, oh my gosh, I'm so distracted by you. What? We hired an SBA lawyer to help us. It was just a flat fee to help us negotiate with the SBA. And our plan was to settle with them. We have a rental property. We were going to sell our rental property and take the proceeds and settle with the SBA. But the bank that we got that SBA loan with they wouldn't even have that conversation with us. And a few months later in July, while me and Enzo were away at summer camp, Jason met a process server at the front door and was served with a lawsuit by the bank. That was once again just like another devastating blow that they were suing us. We'd hoped to be able to settle.
There's a process.
And so they didn't have to, there was no reason for them to sue us. The bank has an SBA guarantee. That's the whole point of it being an SBA loan, is that the SBA, Small Business Administration of the United States, is going to pay the bank for 75% of the loan, regardless. They didn't have to sue us to get that guarantee paid. It was just creating unnecessary stress in our lives. And so we have a friend who is an attorney, and he had kind of been counseling us during this process, and he's actually the one that helped us realize and come to terms with the fact that the business we bought into was not legit, which I'm very thankful for in hindsight, because we watched people spend their life savings and, like I said, retirement funds. They sold houses to pay for it, and we didn't do that. So, but once we found out that we were being sued, we reached out to him, and it was like, okay, well, now is our time to countersue. And so we filed a countersuit against the bank, as well as the franchisor who we purchased the business from. So, yeah, needless to say, lots of stress, lots of sleepless nights, lots of worrying about the future and what it's gonna look like, and what the fallout is gonna be. Oh, trial, what about trial? I mean, it's not till 2026. Trial's not on my mind. Trial's so far in the future. I don't even care about that. Yeah. For me, it's how are we gonna pay our mortgage payment? How are we gonna buy groceries? How are we gonna pay our utility bills?
I've been applying for jobs.
Jason's been applying to jobs for a year. We obviously have had some income, enough to continue, but not enough. And that kind of stress for me personally is overwhelming. It's daunting. And yeah, I already said that's probably why I'm part of the reason I'm in this situation today. So I've worried myself sick. So I know eliminating stress is going to be a big part of my recovery, my emotional health, just learning how to deal with all of this in a healthier way than just keeping it inside and worrying all the time. We've looked into several options for treatment. Obviously, so I've been referred to KU, the University of Kansas here in our area. That's who I went there last week and had an appointment with a doctor. After my MRI results came back, I was referred there. And I had an MRI February 21st, and that came back that suspected malignancy in my breast and my armpit. I don't know if I mentioned this, I have a very large tumor in my breast, and when I found in my armpit just 2 weeks before the MRI, and the MRI results came back suspected malignancy, they referred me to KU. KU did, I went there last week one day and saw a physician's assistant. I don't know why, it was kind of pointless. She just kind of talked about what the next day was going to be. The next day we went back, and they did, we were there for 4.5 hours. It was not fun. The whole system, even just walking in the building, was kind of traumatic. I mean, there's women everywhere with scarves on their heads. There's a ball of women. There's like everyone that's there is there for cancer. Super depressing. Tuesday I went in and we were there for 4.5 hours. I was going in for 2 biopsies, a mammogram and an ultrasound. First was the mammogram, there's a waiting room and then there's a gown waiting room. So for the women, we go and change our clothes into these purple little shirts, and then we all sit in the waiting room together in our matching shirts, and even that was depressing. And then I got called back for a mammogram, and the woman who did it was fine, but she got nicer as time went on, but it definitely was not like warm and friendly. All business, and just, a mammogram is not fun, and I have these large masses, and that wasn't fun with them squishing them and her yanking, shoving me up against the mammogram machine. And there's this stupid pink ribbon on the floor, which I don't know what anybody else's thoughts are, but fuck that pink ribbon. Susan G. Komen Foundation is a scam. I don't want any. That doesn't make me feel good at all. It's just bleh. So, and after that, I get to go back to the gowned waiting room and sit with a whole new group of women, and wait. And then they brought me back for an ultrasound, and that took forever. I mean, she just ultrasounded she wanted everything from my, you know, my armpits, my breasts, my chest. Just, I was in there for a very long time. And when she was all done, she said that she needed to go take him to the radiologist for the radiologist to review, and she would be back. She was probably gone for 30 minutes. I'm just laying on this bed in the room by myself. I didn't bring my phone with me because I didn't think that I just didn't think I would need it. I didn't think there would be a place for it. But man, in that gowned waiting room, that's all the women were doing, was sitting there on their phone. And I didn't have anything to distract myself besides magazines and the TV, which I could have cared less about. So it was just a lot of time to myself. And I actually slept in that on the table while I waited for her to come back. And when she came back, she said, "We're not doing 2 biopsies today, we're doing 5. And it was like fantastic. So then I was taken to a room where I talked to a nurse about what they were going to be doing. She showed me the clips that they would be putting in the biopsy spots after they had biopsied them, kind of explained the process to me, and I met the doctor who was going to be doing it. And then I got to go back out to that gowned waiting room again and wait for them to get the room ready and prepped for the procedure. I came in, and apparently 5 biopsies is a lot, because the ultrasound tech she brought in help. So I guess it's probably a lot for them to like juggle, and you know, because each biopsy was its own process. So the ultrasound tech is running her computer and taking pictures and showing the doctor blood flow, and then the doctor is, you know, finding the lump and numbing the area with lidocaine, and then inserting the needle for the biopsy machine or tool to take samples. And each biopsy spot was at least 4 samples. So it was like a loud click, and then I watched a couple times on the screen. I didn't watch the whole time, but you could watch the needle go in and come out. And then, so that's 5 times, and so 2 on one side, 3 on the other. So they do 2 on one side, and then they have to spin me around on the table to do the other side. And then the nurse came in to hold pressure on it all for 10 minutes and glue me up and tell me my restrictions, and we finally got to go home. And as much as I kept it together all day and really was just kind of like numb through it all, it was like as soon as we left, I started crying. I was told that it would be 3 to 5 days before I got my results back, but the doctor had said that sometimes it's as soon as 24 hours, and it was only 24 hours. The very next day, I got the results back that confirmed that it was invasive ductal carcinoma. But thankfully, the good news was, because when we left the hospital that day, we were really discouraged that they took 5 biopsies, and we felt like this is worse than we thought, and it's possibly in both breasts and God knows where else. So the good news was that it was only in the 2 places that they were originally going to biopsy. The other 3 came back fibroadenomas or something like that, and they weren't anything to worry about. And then they called me, KU called me, and they had me scheduled April 1st appointments for surgeon, oncologist, and radiation oncologist. And she said that though they were still waiting for my tumor markers to come back, and depending on what those tumor markers came back, my appointments may be moved up. And so that was Wednesday. Friday morning, this is the way that it works. Friday morning, I get an email that my appointment has been canceled and one has been scheduled for next week. And so I immediately knew that's not good. So I got the call from my nurse navigator just a few minutes later saying that my tumor markers came back, and they look for, with breast cancer, they look for estrogen receptors, progesterone receptors, and HER2. I don't know what that means, but mine came back all negative. And initially it's like, well, maybe that's a good thing, because then I don't have to worry about like hormone blockers, right? Because women that have positives, like they have to take hormone blockers and this and that. But it's not good news in the fact that it's a more aggressive cancer when it's triple negative, and it's harder to treat because it doesn't respond to chemo as well, or it's harder to know which chemo it responds to, it sounds like. Anyways, it's just triple negative it's not good news. It's 10 to 15% of breast cancers. It's considered rare and aggressive.